The bright blue light of the computer screen reflected off Dr. Alan West's glasses as he leaned forward in his chair. It was past midnight at the International Space Research Institute, and he was the only one still working. He rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his coffee cup, only to find it empty. Just as he was about to call it a night, something on the screen caught his attention. "That's strange," he mumbled to himself. The deep space probe had sent back unusual data from beyond Alpha Centauri. At first, Alan thought it was just random space noise, but as he looked closer, he noticed a pattern. The signal repeated every 47 seconds with the exact same frequency pattern. This was no accident. This was a message. Alan's heart raced as he picked up the phone. "Director Harris? I'm sorry to wake you, but you need to see this right away." 3 days later, the Institute was buzzing with activity. Scientists from around the world had gathered to study the signal. After weeks of analysis, they confirmed what Alan had suspected. It was an invitation from an alien civilization. The world leaders met in an emergency session. After much debate, they decided to accept the invitation and send Earth's first interstellar mission to meet these aliens who called themselves the Voidarians. 6 months later, the starship Horizon was ready for launch. The massive ship gleamed silver in the morning sunlight as the crew prepared to board. "Final checks complete, Commander," said Engineer Jack Perry, a stocky man with calloused hands and a mind that could solve any mechanical problem. "Commander." Susan Miller nodded. With short brown hair and steady eyes, she had been chosen to lead this historic mission because of her calm under pressure. "Thank you, Jack. Is everyone aboard?" "Almost. We're just waiting for Dr. West and the new guy." Alan hurried across the launch pad, his arms full of research notes. Behind him walked Ben Howard, a last-minute addition to the crew. Ben was not a scientist like the others. He was a former wilderness survival expert who had been added to the team after several psychological evaluations showed he had an exceptional ability to adapt to unknown situations. "Sorry we're late," Alan said as he reached the ship's entrance. "I wanted to go over some translation theories with Ben." Susan checked her watch. "You're just in time. Let's go make history." The launch was smooth, and after the Horizon reached escape velocity, the crew settled in for the long journey. The ship had been built with experimental faster-than-light drive technology that would get them to the Voidarian space station in 6 months instead of several lifetimes. During the journey, the crew trained and prepared. Communications specialist Paul Kim worked with Alan to develop better translation algorithms. Security officer Lisa Green ran daily drills to prepare for any possible threats. Jack kept the ship's systems running perfectly, and Ben mostly kept to himself, exercising in the ship's gym and reading books about alien encounter theories. "I don't understand why he's even here," Lisa said one day in the mess hall, nodding toward Ben, who sat alone in the corner. "He's not a scientist or a military expert." "Director Harris said we needed someone with survival instincts," Susan replied. "Someone who thinks differently than the rest of us." Alan nodded. "We're all used to controlled environments and structured problems. Ben has lived through situations where the rules keep changing. That might be valuable where we're going." 6 months passed quickly, and soon the Horizon approached the coordinates provided in the alien message. Before them floated a massive structure that looked like a series of connected rings, each spinning at different speeds. "It's beautiful," whispered Alan as they approached. Paul's voice came over the comm system. "We're receiving a transmission. They're guiding us to a docking area." The Horizon moved slowly toward an opening in one of the rings. Inside was a large bay where the ship settled gently onto a smooth surface. "Atmosphere reads as breathable," Jack reported after running tests. "Gravity is slightly less than Earth normal." Susan stood before the airlock. "Remember our mission. We are here to establish friendly contact and learn about this new civilization. Stay alert but non-threatening." She looked at each crew member. "Ready?" They nodded, and Susan opened the outer door. The docking bay was filled with soft, purple light. As the crew stepped out, they saw them, the Voidarians. The aliens were tall, almost 3 meters in height, with bodies that seemed to be made of semi-transparent crystal. They moved with a flowing grace, and instead of speaking, they communicated through pulses of light that flickered across their surface. One of the aliens approached and stopped a few meters from the humans. A pulse of light traveled from its center to its edges and back again. Paul checked his translation device. It says, "Welcome, Earth beings. We are pleased you accepted our invitation." Susan stepped forward. "We are honored to meet you and thank you for reaching out to us." The alien's lights pulsed again, and Paul translated, "We have been observing your world for some time. You are unusual among the species we have encountered. In what way?" Alan asked, his scientific curiosity piqued. The alien's lights changed to a deep blue color. "You come from what we classify as a death world?" The crew exchanged confused glances. "A death world?" Susan asked. "A planet with conditions that would be fatal to most spacefaring species," Paul translated as the alien pulsed. "High gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic elements in your atmosphere, harmful radiation from your sun, dangerous predators. By our standards, your Earth should not support intelligent life." Alan couldn't help but smile. "Yet here we are." The alien's lights flickered rapidly. "Yes, here you are, and we find this ... fascinating." The alien gestured for them to follow, its crystalline form catching the light as it moved. "We have prepared a special demonstration in your honor." As they walked through the station, the humans saw other alien species watching them with what seemed like caution or fear. The Voidarians led them to a large chamber with viewing screens on one wall. "This is our proving grounds," the alien explained through the translator. "A series of environments we have created to test the adaptability of different species. We would be honored if you would participate." Susan studied the alien carefully. Something about the way it pulsed its lights made her uneasy. "What kind of test is this?" "Simply a way for us to understand your capabilities better. Many civilizations have participated in this cultural exchange." The screen showed a series of 5 chambers, each looking more extreme than the last. Lisa leaned close to Susan and whispered, "I don't like this. Something feels off." But before Susan could respond, the alien continued, "Who among you will represent humanity in this demonstration of interspecies understanding?" The crew looked at each other, uncertainty in their eyes. The alien's request seemed simple enough, but something in the way the other species had looked at them made them hesitate. Then Ben stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said simply. All eyes turned to him, the quiet, reserved survival expert who had barely spoken during the entire journey. "Ben, we don't know what this involves," Susan warned. Ben shrugged. "That's why I'm here, isn't it? To face the unknown." He turned to the alien. "I accept your challenge." The alien's lights pulsed rapidly, almost excitedly. "Excellent. The demonstration will begin shortly." As the alien led Ben away, Alan noticed something disturbing. On one of the screens showing the 5th chamber, he saw what looked like the remains of a previous participant. "Commander," he said quietly to Susan, "I think we may have just sent Ben into something much more dangerous than a cultural exchange." Susan's face hardened as she watched Ben disappear through a doorway with the alien. "Get ready to pull him out at the first sign of trouble. This demonstration may have just become a rescue mission." The Voidarian led Ben through a long, curved hallway. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within the material itself. Ben walked quietly, taking in every detail. His years of survival training had taught him to always know his surroundings. "Our proving grounds have existed for thousands of your Earth years." The alien's lights pulsed as it spoke. The translation device at Ben's belt converted the light patterns to English. "Many species have attempted the challenges. None have completed all 5 chambers." "What happens in these chambers?" Ben asked. The alien's crystal body shimmered. "Each chamber tests different aspects of biological resilience. It is educational for us." Ben didn't like the way the alien paused before saying educational. It reminded him of the way scientists talked about lab rats. Meanwhile, back in the viewing room, the rest of the crew watched anxiously as Ben followed the alien on the monitor screens. I need to know exactly what these proving grounds involve. Commander, Susan demanded of the Voidarian ambassador who had stayed with them. The ambassador's lights flickered rapidly. It is a series of environments designed to test adaptability. The first participants enter soon. Observe. The main screen changed to show a large circular room. 3 different alien species stood inside. One looked like a tall insect with 4 arms. Another was a short furry creature with 6 eyes, and the third resembled a jellyfish floating in air. These are representatives from 3 worlds in nearby systems, the ambassador explained. They will attempt the chambers alongside your human. Alan studied the aliens with interest. What are their homeworlds like? The Kreks, the ambassador pointed to the insect-like being, come from a low-gravity world with thick atmosphere. The Nubbly, it indicated the furry creature, evolved on a cold planet with high oxygen levels. The Medusan, the floating jellyfish, lives in gas clouds of their home system, Jack frowned. And what about the chambers they're entering? You will see, the ambassador replied, its lights dimming slightly on the screen. Ben entered the circular room and nodded politely to the 3 aliens. A voice spoke in multiple languages. Chamber 1 will begin in 30 seconds. Prepare yourselves. Ben, Susan spoke into her communicator. Can you hear us? Loud and clear, Commander, Ben replied. I'm about to start some kind of test with 3 other aliens. Be careful. We don't know. Her words were cut off as a door slid open in the circular room. Ben and the 3 aliens moved toward it. The first chamber tests atmospheric adaptability, the ambassador explained to the watching crew. As Ben stepped through the doorway, he entered a large chamber filled with a thin, greenish mist. The air smelled strange, like burnt metal and something sour. His eyes began to water immediately and his throat burned when he took a breath. What is this? He gasped into his communicator. Alan was already analyzing the readings from Ben's suit sensors. The atmosphere contains compounds toxic to most carbon-based life. Ben, try to control your breathing. Short, shallow breaths. Ben nodded and focused on his breathing technique. In his survival career, he had trained in environments from high mountain peaks with thin air to underwater caves. He knew how to make each breath count. The insect-like Kreks seemed to be struggling the most. It fell to its knees, all 4 arms clutching at what might have been its breathing organs. The furry Nubbly was coughing violently, its 6 eyes bulging. Only the jellyfish Medusan appeared unaffected, floating serenely through the mist. This is not just a test, Lisa said, watching the aliens suffer. This is torture. It is science, the ambassador corrected. We must understand the limitations of different biological systems. On the screen, Ben pressed forward, moving toward the far side of the chamber where another door waited. Each step was difficult as his lungs struggled to filter the toxic air. The Medusan floated ahead of him, reaching the door first. The Nubbly was crawling slowly behind them. The Kreks had stopped moving entirely. 1 species already eliminated, the ambassador noted calmly. Not unexpected. The Krek's respiratory system is highly specialized. You mean it's dead? Paul asked in shock. Its vital functions have ceased, yes, the ambassador replied. This is the purpose of the proving grounds, to determine biological thresholds. Susan's face hardened. This isn't a test. It's a death trap. We're pulling Ben out now. She reached for her communicator, but the ambassador's body suddenly glowed. Brightly, you cannot interrupt the demonstration. The chambers are sealed until completion or cessation of functions. You tricked us, Lisa said, her hand moving to her weapon. We invited participation. Your human volunteered? The ambassador countered. Observe, he performs better than expected. On the screen, Ben had reached the door. The Medusan was already through it, and the Nubbly had collapsed halfway across the chamber. Ben paused, looking back at the suffering alien. Leave it, the ambassador said. It cannot survive. But Ben turned and moved back toward the fallen Nubbly. He reached down and lifted the furry creature, carrying it toward the door despite his own difficulty breathing. What is he doing? The ambassador's lights pulsed rapidly. This is not part of the protocol. Alan smiled slightly. That's humanity for you. We don't leave others behind. Ben carried the nubbly through the door into a small transition chamber. Clean air filled the space and Ben took deep breaths, his lungs burning. The nubbly stirred in his arms, its 6 eyes blinking weakly. Double quotes, thank ... help. It said in broken English through its own translator. Don't mention it, Ben replied, setting. The alien downed gently. The door to the next chamber opened. The Medusan waited inside, its tentacles waving slightly. Chamber 2 will test temperature adaptation, announced the voice. Proceed. Ben stepped into the second chamber and immediately felt the heat. It was like walking into an oven. Sweat broke out all over his body at once. Temperature is climbing rapidly, Alan reported, watching the sensor readings. 105 degrees Fahrenheit, ... 120, 130, ... The nubbly let out a cry of distress. Its furry body was clearly adapted for cold environments, not extreme heat. It turned to retreat, but the door had sealed behind them. This chamber begins hot and then cycles to extreme cold, the ambassador explained. Few species can endure both extremes. Ben removed his outer jacket and wrapped it around the suffering nubbly, trying to provide some insulation from the heat. The Medusan's gelatinous body appeared to be shrinking as moisture evaporated from it. He's not just trying to survive, Susan observed. He's trying to help the others survive, too. The ambassador's lights pulsed in patterns the translator couldn't interpret. It seemed confused or agitated by Ben's behavior. Humans are strange, it finally said. On your death world, cooperation increases survival? Always, Jack replied. Firmly, it's how we've survived our death world for thousands of years. On the screen, Ben braced himself as the temperature continued to rise. His survival training had included desert conditions, but nothing like this. The heat was becoming unbearable, and black spots danced at the edges of his vision. Hold on, Ben, Susan encouraged through the communicator. We're working on getting you out of there. Ben nodded weakly, knowing they were watching. He had to keep going, not just for himself now, but for the aliens who were suffering alongside him. The nubbly was barely conscious, and even the Medusan was struggling. As Ben's vision began to fade, he heard the voice announce, "Temperature shift initiating." The scorching heat suddenly began to drop. Within minutes, frost was forming on the walls. Ben's sweat-soaked clothes began to freeze against his skin. From one extreme to another, he muttered, shivering violently. Just a typical day on Earth. Ben's teeth chattered as the temperature in the chamber dropped well below freezing. Ice crystals formed on his eyelashes and the walls gleamed with frost. The nubbly, however, seemed to perk up in the cold. Its fur fluffed out and its 6 eyes brightened. Cold good, it said through its translator, taking back Ben's jacket and handing it to him. Help now, you. The Medusan was not doing well. Its floating body was becoming stiff and solid as the fluid inside it began to freeze. Ben and the nubbly moved to either side of the jellyfish-like alien, trying to share body heat. In the viewing room, Dr. Alan West watched the temperature readings with growing concern. It's -40 degrees in there now. That's dangerously cold, even for humans adapted to Arctic conditions. How is he still functioning? The Voidarian ambassadors. Lights pulsed rapidly. Most species are immobile at these temperatures. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme weather variations, Alan explained. We've lived in everything from burning deserts to frozen tundra. And Ben specifically has survival training in harsh environments, added Susan. But he can't last forever in these conditions. Jack Perry was examining the schematics of the proving grounds that had appeared on one of the screens. These chambers seemed to be controlled from the central system. If I could access it, interference is not permitted, the ambassador interrupted, its crystal body glowing brightly. The demonstration must proceed without external influence. Lisa moved closer to the ambassador, her expression hard. This stopped being a demonstration when the first alien died. Either you help us get Ben out, or we'll find our own way. On the screen, a door on the far side of the frozen chamber slid open. Ben and the Nubbly, supporting the nearly solid Medusan between them, staggered toward it. "Chamber 2 complete," announced the automated voice. "Proceed to Chamber 3. The next room was small and plain with metallic walls and floor. Ben and the Nubbly gently set down the Medusan, which was beginning to thaw and regain movement. "What next?" Ben asked, looking around the empty chamber. His answer came in the form of a low humming sound. The metallic walls began to glow with a strange purple light. "Radiation levels rising?" Alan reported, watching the sensors in Ben's suit. "This is Chamber 3, the radiation bath." Ben felt a warm, tingling sensation across his skin that quickly became uncomfortable, then painful. The Nubbly whimpered, curling into a ball on the floor. The Medusan's body began to pulse with matching purple light. "Ben, try to find something to shield yourself," Susan urged through the communicator, but the room was empty. There was nowhere to hide from the invisible radiation filling the space. "Radiation levels now at 8 sieverts," Alan announced, his voice tight. "That's well into the lethal range for humans." "No species has survived Chamber 3 at full intensity," the ambassador stated. "The demonstration will conclude shortly." Paul Kim, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "What exactly are you testing here?" "It seems like you're just finding different ways to kill people." The ambassador's lights pulsed slowly. "We study biological resilience. It helps us understand which species pose potential threats." "Threats?" Susan's eyes narrowed. "So this isn't scientific curiosity, it's a defense mechanism? You're testing if we're dangerous to you." "All knowledge serves multiple purposes," the ambassador replied evasively. On the screen, Ben had fallen to his knees. His skin was red and blistering, and he was clearly in pain. But he remained conscious, fighting through the agony. The Nubbly was no longer moving, its fur falling out in clumps. Only the Medusan seemed to be tolerating the radiation, its body absorbing the purple light. "He should not still be conscious." The ambassador's lights flickered rapidly. "The radiation levels are fatal to carbon-based life." Alan studied the readings from Ben's suit. "Humans have remarkable cellular repair mechanisms. Our bodies are constantly fighting damage from solar radiation on Earth, but even Ben has limits. He needs to get out of there now." Ben crawled toward the far door, each movement clearly causing him pain. The Medusan floated beside him, its tentacles reaching down to help pull him forward. "Leave ... Nubbly ... Ben gasped into his communicator, seeing that the furry alien was no longer breathing. "2 eliminated, 2 remain," the ambassador noted. "Unexpected progress." The door to Chamber 4 opened as Ben and the Medusan approached. Ben glanced back at the fallen Nubbly, his face showing grief despite his own suffering. Then he crawled through the doorway, the Medusan floating after him. In the small transition room, Ben collapsed against the wall. His skin was raw and his breathing labored. "Ben?" "Report status," Susan called through the communicator. "Still ... here," he managed. "Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger ... The human jokes while dying," the ambassador observed. "Fascinating. He's not going to die," Lisa said firmly. "Humans are tougher than you think." The door to Chamber 4 slid open, revealing a room that looked ordinary at first glance. But as Ben staggered to his feet and stepped inside, he immediately fell to his knees again. "Gravity increasing," announced the automated voice. "Chamber 4 will test structural integrity under pressure." Ben felt like an invisible hand was pressing down on him, making every movement a struggle. The weight on his chest made breathing difficult. The Medusan, which had been floating effortlessly until now, sank to the floor, its gelatinous body flattening under the increased gravity. "Gravity now at 3 times Earth normal," Alan reported. "The Medusan's homeworld must have very low gravity. It can't maintain its shape." Ben forced himself onto his hands and knees. Earth's gravity was already higher than most inhabited worlds in the galaxy, according to what the Voidarians had told them. His body was better prepared for this challenge than the previous ones. "Look at him," Jack said with a note of pride. "He's still moving." The ambassador's crystal body vibrated slightly. Impossible. No species has maintained mobility above twice their native gravity. Deathworlders, remember? Paul said. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We adapted. Ben crawled forward inch by painful inch. His muscles screamed in protest and his bones felt like they might snap under the pressure. But he kept moving, driven by a stubborn refusal to give up. The Medusan was struggling beside him, its body spreading out like a puddle on the floor. One of its tentacles reached out and touched Ben's arm. Together, came a voice from the translator, speaking for the first time. Forward. Ben nodded and reached down to scoop up as much of the Medusan as he could. The alien was heavy under the increased gravity, but Ben managed to gather it against his chest. Then he continued his slow crawl toward the far door in the viewing room. The crew watched in tense silence as Ben fought his way across Chamber 4. The ambassador's lights had dimmed to almost nothing, as if it was shocked into silence. Gravity now at 4 times Earth normal, Alan said quietly. He shouldn't be able to move at all, but he is, Susan replied, because that's what humans do. We keep going when everything says we should stop. On the screen, Ben reached the far door. His face was red with effort, veins standing out on his forehead and neck. With one final push, he crossed the threshold. The Medusan clutched against him as the door closed behind them. Ben collapsed in the transition room, the crushing gravity suddenly gone. He lay on his back, gasping for breath, the Medusan slowly reforming its shape beside him. Chamber 4 complete, announced the voice. Proceed to Chamber 5 when ready. The ambassador's lights suddenly blazed brightly. This is unprecedented. No species has ever reached Chamber 5 while maintaining cognition. What's in Chamber 5? Susan demanded. For the first time, the ambassador seemed hesitant. Chamber 5 is different. It tests not just physical resilience, but mental fortitude. Ben, Susan called into her communicator. Can you hear me? After a moment of silence, Ben's voice came through, weak but determined. I hear you, Commander. 1 more to go. Ben lay on the floor of the small transition room, his body aching from the challenges he had endured. The radiation burns on his skin throbbed with pain, and his muscles felt torn from fighting the crushing gravity. Beside him, the Medusan was, slowly regaining its normal shape, its jellyfish-like body pulsing with weak light. Ben, you don't have to continue? Susan's voice came through his communicator. We're working on a way to get you out. Ben took a deep breath and pushed himself up to sitting position. What's in Chamber 5? He asked. There was a pause before Susan replied. The ambassador says it tests mental fortitude. But no one has ever made it through all 5 chambers, Ben. No one even knows exactly what happens in there. Ben looked at the door leading to the final chamber. Then he glanced at the Medusan beside him. What about you? Ready for one more? The alien's tentacles waved gently. Will ... dry? Came the translated voice ... in the viewing room. The crew watched anxiously as Ben struggled to his feet. His face was pale and drawn with exhaustion and pain, but his eyes were clear and determined. He's going to do it, Alan said quietly. He's going to try Chamber 5. The ambassador's crystal body had been vibrating slightly ever since Ben had completed Chamber 4. Its light pulses were rapid and irregular. Your human should not have survived this long, it said. His biological readings suggest he should be dead or at least unconscious. You keep underestimating what humans can endure, Jack replied. Our entire history is about surviving things that should kill us. Lisa had been examining the schematics of the proving grounds more closely. There's something strange about Chamber 5. It uses much less power than the others, but has more complex systems. It is not primarily a physical test, the ambassador explained. It is ... different. On the screen, Ben had reached the final door. He paused, took a deep breath, and then pressed the panel to open it. The door slid aside to reveal a room that looked completely ordinary white walls. Normal lighting and a simple floor. Ben stepped inside cautiously, the Medusan floating behind him. The door closed, and for a moment nothing happened. Is it Working? Ben asked, looking around the empty room. Suddenly, the white walls began to shimmer and change. Images appeared around Ben, vivid, lifelike scenes that seemed to surround him completely. He found himself standing in a forest on Earth. The trees swayed in a gentle breeze, and birds sang overhead. "What is this?" Ben asked, turning in a circle. To take in the perfect illusion. "Ben, what are you seeing?" Susan asked through the communicator. "It's Earth, a forest. It looks and feels completely real." The ambassador's lights pulsed. Chamber 5 creates individualized mental challenges based on the subject's own mind. It pulls images and scenarios from their memories and fears. As if on cue, the peaceful forest scene began to change. The bright daylight dimmed and the birds fell silent. The trees grew twisted and dark, their branches reaching out like claws. From between them, shadows moved, shapes that were not quite human and not quite animal. "Something's changing," Ben reported, his voice tense. "The forest is becoming wrong." A figure stepped out from behind a tree. It was Susan, but her eyes were cold and her face was hard. "We're leaving you here, Ben," the illusion of Susan said. "You weren't important enough to save." Ben blinked, knowing it wasn't real, but the words still stung. More figures appeared, the rest of the crew, all turning their backs on him. "It's showing him abandonment scenarios," Alan said, watching Ben's vital signs spike with stress. "It's using his fears against him." The Medusan was experiencing its own hallucinations. Its body pulsed with erratic light patterns, and it spun in circles as if trying to escape something unseen. In Ben's illusion, the forest was now burning around him. Heat that felt completely real seared his skin, adding to the pain of his radiation. Burns. Through the flames, he could see the crew boarding the horizon without him. "It's not real," Ben said firmly, closing his eyes. "This is just another test." But when he opened his eyes, the scene had changed again. Now he stood in a barren wasteland Earth, but destroyed and lifeless. Bodies lay scattered around him, and in the distance alien ships filled the sky. "This is what will happen if you complete the proving grounds," a voice whispered in his mind. "They will see humans as a threat. They will destroy your world." Ben felt cold fear grip his heart. Was this true? Was he endangering Earth by proving how resilient humans could be? In the viewing room, the ambassador watched intently as Ben's vital signs showed extreme stress. "The final chamber reveals the deepest fears," it explained. "Most species become trapped in their own nightmares, unable to distinguish reality from illusion until their minds break." "That's barbaric," Paul said angrily. "It is necessary," the ambassador replied. "Species that can overcome Chamber 5 have mental resilience that makes them concerning." On the screen, Ben had fallen to his knees in his personalized nightmare. The Medusan was writhing in what appeared to be its own mental agony nearby. "Ben," Susan called through the communicator. "Whatever you're seeing isn't real. It's a test, just like the others." Ben's voice came back faintly. "It feels real. They're showing me Earth being destroyed because of what I'm doing here. It's manipulation," Susan insisted. "They're trying to break you." Ben closed his eyes again, focusing on his breathing. In his years as a survival expert, he had learned that panic was often more dangerous than any physical threat. The mind could be your greatest ally or your worst enemy in a survival situation. "I know what's real," he said to himself. Then louder, "I know what's real." The illusions flickered around him but didn't disappear. The false Susan returned, her face twisted with contempt. "You're just the spare crew member," the illusion said. "The one no one miss." Ben stood up straight, facing the false image. "That's not true. And even if it was, it wouldn't matter. I'm not doing this for recognition." He turned to look at the Medusan, which was still trapped in its own hallucinations. Ben moved to the alien's side and gently touched one of its tentacles. "It's not real," he said firmly. "Whatever you're seeing, it's just an illusion." The Medusan's frantic movements slowed slightly at his touch. Its body pulsed with light that the translator converted. "Help, Focus on me," Ben said. "I'm real. This room is real." Everything else is just in our minds? In the viewing room, the ambassador's lights had become very dim. He is ... helping the other subject? This is not part of the test. That's humanity for you, Susan said. We don't just survive, we help others survive too. On the screen, Ben was standing with the Medusan, both of them surrounded by their personal nightmares but fighting against them together. The illusions seemed to waver and weaken as they focused on each other rather than the false realities around them. The exit, Ben said, pointing to a door that had appeared on the far wall. Let's go. Step by step, they moved across the room, ignoring the frightening visions that tried to distract and terrify them. When they reached the door, Ben pressed the panel and it slid open. Beyond was a simple white room with a single message displayed. On the wall, proving grounds complete. Ben stared at it in disbelief, then laughed weakly. We did it, he said to the Medusan. We actually did it. The Medusan's body glowed with bright, steady light. Together, its translator said. Impossible. Alone. In the viewing room, silence fell as everyone stared at the screen. Then the ambassador's crystal body suddenly blazed with intense light. This changes everything, it said, its pulses so rapid that the translator struggled to keep up. A Deathworlder, with both physical resilience and mental fortitude, and one who helps others rather than only ensuring his own survival. Susan stepped closer to the ambassador. Now, will you let us bring him back to the ship? He needs medical attention. The ambassador seemed to hesitate, its lights shifting through various patterns. Yes, but first, your crew must understand what this means. What means? Alan asked. In all our history, no species has completed the proving grounds, the ambassador explained. The Voidarian Council must be informed immediately. Your human has just changed our understanding of life in the galaxy. As medical drones entered the completion room to tend to Ben and the Medusan, Susan could see that despite his injuries, Ben was smiling. He had faced the worst the aliens could throw at him, and he had survived. 3 days later, Ben sat in the medical bay of the Horizon. The worst of his radiation burns had been treated, and his muscles were slowly recovering from the strain of the high-gravity chamber. The Medusan floated nearby, its body now glowing. With healthy blue light, the door slid open, and Commander Susan Miller entered with Dr. Alan West and the rest of the crew. How are you feeling? Susan asked, pulling up a chair beside Ben's bed. Like I've been hit by a truck, Ben replied with a small smile, but the doctor says I'll make a full recovery. Alan checked the medical readouts. Your cellular repair rate is remarkable. Most humans would take weeks to recover from this level of radiation exposure. Lucky me, Ben said, then looked at the Medusan. How about my friend here? The alien's body pulsed with light that the translator converted to words. I am restored. My people will sing of our journey through the chambers for generations. Lisa Green leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You might be singing about more than just surviving. The Voidarian Council has been in emergency sessions. Ever since you two completed the proving grounds. What's happening out there? Ben asked, nodding toward the viewport where the alien space station was visible. Paul, Kim had been monitoring the Voidarian communications. From what I can tell, it's chaos. Their entire society is built around the belief that they are the most advanced species in the galaxy. The proving grounds were designed to confirm that belief. And now a human and a Medusan working together have proven them wrong, Jack Perry added. The medical bay door opened again, and the Voidarian ambassador entered. Its crystal body seemed dimmer than before, the light pulses slower and more measured. The human is recovering, it observed. This, too, is unexpected. The cumulative damage from all chambers should have been fatal. You keep underestimating us, Susan said. That seems to be a pattern. The ambassador moved closer to Ben's bed. The council has reached a decision. I've been instructed to provide you with information that has never been shared with non-Voidarians. Everyone in the room grew quiet, waiting. For 10,000 of your Earth years, we have used the proving grounds to evaluate other species, the ambassador began. We classified worlds based on the survival rates of their representatives. Class 1 worlds had the gentlest conditions, low gravity, stable temperatures, no radiation, predictable environments. Most spacefaring civilizations evolved on such worlds. Alan nodded, like the Voidarian homeworld. Yes, we evolved in conditions that nurtured life rather than challenged it. As we explored the galaxy, we discovered worlds with harsher conditions, class 2 and 3 worlds with moderate challenges. The species from these worlds showed greater physical resilience but rarely developed advanced technology. And Earth? Susan asked. Earth is what we classified as a Class 5 death world. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, high radiation, atmospheric toxins, aggressive predators, unpredictable natural disasters, conditions that should make advanced civilization impossible. No Class 5 world had ever produced a spacefaring species ... until we detected your signals. Ben understood now. So, the proving grounds were designed to test if we really could be as dangerous as our planet suggested. Yes, the ambassador admitted. The chambers replicate the most extreme conditions found throughout the galaxy. No species was expected to survive all 5. It was merely a measure of how dangerous a species might become. And now that we've completed your test? Susan asked. The ambassador's lights pulsed slowly. The Council has reclassified humanity. You are no longer merely Class 5 Deathworlders. You are now designated as thriving Deathworlders. Species that not only survive harsh conditions but adapt and excel because of them. Jack laughed. So we passed your test with flying colors. You misunderstand, the ambassador said. This is not celebration. This is concern. A species that can endure what should be fatal, that can overcome physical and mental challenges designed to be insurmountable. Such a species could potentially survive anything the galaxy might use to defend against them. The room grew quiet as the implications became clear. You were afraid of us, Alan said softly. The proving grounds weren't just a test, they were a defense mechanism. You wanted to know if we were a threat. All knowledge serves multiple purposes, the ambassador replied. Echoing its earlier words, Ben sat up straighter in his bed. But you missed something important in your calculations. I didn't survive alone. I helped the Nubbly in the 1st chamber. The Medusan and I helped each other in the 5th chamber. Humans don't just endure, we cooperate. The Medusan pulsed with light. This is truth. Alone I would have failed. Together we succeeded. The ambassador was silent for a moment, its lights dim, then it brightened slightly. This too was unexpected. Our models predicted that a Class 5 species would prioritize individual survival above all else. Well, your models were wrong, Susan said firmly. And that changes everything. Doesn't it? Yes, the ambassador admitted. The Council has determined that traditional containment protocols would be ineffective for humanity, Lisa tensed. Containment protocols? Species deemed too dangerous to interact with the wider galaxy are typically isolated. Their worlds are quarantined, their development monitored but not interfered with. And now? Alan asked. Now we must adapt. The Council proposes a new approach alliance rather than isolation. If humanity cannot be contained, then cooperation becomes the logical alternative. Susan looked skeptical. You tried to kill our crew member in a series of death traps, and now you want an alliance? The ambassador's lights pulsed rapidly. The proving grounds were never intended for a species that could complete them. We have no protocols for this situation. The Council believes that a species with humanity's resilience, combined with your unexpected tendency toward cooperation, represents both great danger and great opportunity. Ben looked at the Medusan floating beside his bed, then back at the ambassador. So what happens now? The Council invites Earth to send representatives to discuss terms of alliance. They also request that your Ben Howard serve as special advisor to the Voidarian Science Directorate. His unique perspective would be valuable. Susan looked at Ben, raising an eyebrow. What do you think? Ben smiled slightly. Well, I came on this mission to face the unknown. Looks like I'll get to keep doing that. As the ambassador left to report back to the council, the crew gathered around Ben's bed. You know what's funny? Ben said. They thought Earth was a death world, a planet so harsh that life should barely survive there. But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe Earth isn't a death world at all. Maybe it's the perfect training ground for a species meant to thrive among the stars. Alan nodded thoughtfully. The very things they feared about us, our adaptability, our resilience, are the qualities that will make us valuable allies. And the thing they never expected, Susan added, our tendency to help others even at risk to ourselves might be our greatest strength of all. Outside the viewport, the massive Voidarian space station glowed against the backdrop of stars. Somewhere in those alien corridors, a council was rewriting their understanding of life in the universe. Humanity, the Deathworlders who shouldn't exist, had not only survived, but had shown a new path forward. Ben looked out at the stars. I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The beginning of what? Lisa asked. Ben smiled. The beginning of humanity showing the galaxy what Deathworlders are really capable of.